Very good evening, friends. I hope you're all safe and healthy. Well, I have been making some small videos in Ind AS 101, that is first time adoption of Ind AS. And I thought it's a huge topic, and I think let's have a little consolidated look at this particular standard before the close of the year. So I thought, all these inputs what I've given you, let me just have a glance at, what we have learned on Ind AS 101 so far, so that we can have a little consolidations of the learning. Our journey started in terms of Ind AS 101, where we, started off with the concept of terminologies, then went ahead with the concept of an opening Ind AS balance sheet, looking at the exemptions and the exceptions, and then finally looking at the reconciliation. So I'm just going to remind you some important concepts, what we have learned over the journey of this particular standard with you. So in this particular video, I'm just going to make a little summary in terms of what we have learned, so we get the connecting, the inputs, and everything gets consolidated as a whole. Let's have a look at 101 at a glance in this video. जो बच्चे सीए फाइनल की अपनी मई 22 और नवंबर 22 की तैयारी कर रहे हैं, उनके लिए योद्धा बैच के अंदर कल से शुरू होने जा रहा है फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग का कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव बैच। ये बैच मंडे से सैटरडे होता है 6 AM to 8 AM, और इसके अंदर हम सभी टॉपिक्स आपके साथ कवर करेंगे इन अ कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव मैनर। इस बैच को सब्सक्राइब करने के लिए डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स के अंदर आपको एक लिंक मिलेगा, और आप उसके अंदर फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग के अलावा बाकी सभी सब्जेक्ट्स भी उसी के अंदर एक्सेस कर सकते हैं, यानी कि ऑडिट, लॉ और एसएफएम, ये सभी सब्जेक्ट्स आप इसके अंदर अवेल कर सकते हैं। और जब आप इस लिंक को क्लिक करेंगे तो इसके अंदर आपको जो अलग अलग सब्सक्रिप्शन प्लान्स नजर आएंगे, उन पर आप डिस्काउंट अवेल कर सकते हैं, और उसके लिए मेरा कोड इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं CAKB10, और इससे आपको 10% डिस्काउंट भी मिलेगा। तो भाई किस बात का इंतजार है, आइए लेट्स क्रैक इट। Well, my journey on Ind AS 101 started with you when I introduced certain terminologies to you in this particular standard. And in this particular standard, we identified, to begin with, what is the concept of the first Ind AS reporting period. When a company decides, let's say on 1st April 2020, that it wants to apply Ind AS, then you can say 2021 becomes the first Ind AS reporting period. We also present a comparatives for the previous year, that is 1920, and the beginning of the previous year, that is 1st April 19, becomes what we call the date of transition. The date of transition is a very important aspect, because that is the date when a third balance sheet is made, which is called the opening Ind AS balance sheet. The entire focus in terms of Ind AS 101 is that when you're making that opening Ind AS balance sheet, then what kind of exemptions and what kind of exceptions are available in terms of making this opening Ind AS balance sheet. Now, in a very idealistic situation, when a company would adopt Ind AS for the first time, we would require that the company should go in for a retrospective accounting. That means application of all the accounting policies in a retrospective manner. Now, this would be, putting too much pressure on the company, and I think considering the benefits which you would achieve and the cost and the time factor which would involve, it would not justify. And we can also say that there would be a lot of assumptions which might be required in terms of going in for a retrospective application. So considering the times and efforts and the cost involved and the level of estimations which might be required for a retrospective application, the standard Ind AS 101 gives you what we call E&E. That's what I call it as E&E. The exemptions and the exceptions. That means the opening balance sheet which you've got based on a previous gap is supposed to be translated into the opening Ind AS balance sheet, and from which you get certain exemptions and you get certain exceptions. Our journey started on the focus of the opening Ind AS balance sheet, and then I entered into the E&E. That's what I call the exceptions and the exemptions. Now, we are given certain mandatory exceptions in the Appendix B, and we are given certain optional exemptions in terms of Appendix D and Appendix E. Now, as far as the Appendix C is concerned, it is typically dealing in terms of business combinations, where the Appendix C is talking about a retrospective application to be done to business combinations or not, and the entity could choose a cut-off date where they want to go for retrospective applications or not. The Appendix B is dealing with the mandatory exceptions, where it is prohibited that the entity would not apply any retrospective applications of certain items. And as far as Appendix D is concerned, it is dealing with the optional exemptions apart from Ind AS 103, that what other standards are dealing with. So we went across the Appendix B insights, we went across the Appendix C, and we went across the Appendix D. Now, after all these exceptions and the exemptions, finally your opening Ind AS balance sheet on the date of transaction gets ready. Then there are more aspects which we need to take care, and these aspects are in terms of reconciliations. You would be required to make reconciliation statements reconciling the equity as per the previous GAAP and as per the Ind AS on the transition date, and also reconciling the equity, you can say, on the end of the comparative period. We are also required to make a reconciliation in terms of the statement of comprehensive income, the profits which are computed for the comparative periods versus the profits which are computed based on the Ind AS. So these reconciliations will also be a part of the first Ind AS financial statements. This is how the entire journey in terms of Ind AS 101 has been. And I thought, it's a good time to consolidate all into one particular video. Of course, not the details. Now you can have a look at almost like 20 videos which I have created on Ind AS 101. So I think this might be almost the last video for the new year. So I would also take the opportunity of wishing all of you a very happy new year, and thank you for watching this video. I'm going to come with some new series with you in the coming new year as well. So till then, thank you, take care, and goodbye.